Hello, this is George Hutton, and you're listening to the Mind Persuasion Podcast. Today we continue our study of Tung Fu, the art of interconversational reframe. Chapter 11, 7-Step Strategy. This will serve as the basic strategy for slowly obliterating, one by one, any self-perceived weaknesses in your frame. The more of these you eliminate, the stronger your frame will naturally become. Step 1. Create an outcome. Think of something specific you want that you don't have. It's better if it doesn't come from a specific person, as these serve to strengthen your frame in general. For example, getting a phone number from an attractive woman is a better outcome than getting a phone number from a specific person. Recall our discussion on exchanges and qualified targets. Step 2. Create an honest question that would elicit the outcome. Think of a person that would help you get the outcome. Imagine a question you could ask a qualified person, so if they agreed or said yes to the question, you would get your outcome. In the example of getting a phone number from an attractive woman, the question would be, "May I have your phone number?" Note that this question is for this internal exercise only, meaning the actual question or suggestion would likely be different based on the situation. The purpose of making it a direct question for this exercise is a direct question will most likely elicit the most feared response. Step 3. Imagine several objections that you wouldn't know what to say to. Imagine as many of your worst feared answers to your question. In the phone number example, they would be things like, "I don't want to give my phone number to you because you are ugly. I don't want to give you my number because you aren't attractive." These aren't things you realistically anticipate. These are things that would damage your ego the most. The more horrific you can imagine these, the better. Step 4. Put the objections in proper form. Before attacking the objections with the patterns we'll learn in the next chapter, they must be in the right form. They must be in the A causes B form or the A means B form. For example, consider if your worst feared rejection after the phone number question is, "I don't want to give you my number because you aren't attractive." We'll have to do some creative thinking to find the simplest form that still means the same thing. A equals "you aren't attractive." B equals "I can't give you my phone number." Think of this step as like an algebra test where you have to make your final answer as simple as possible. What is another way to say B that would mean the same thing but be simpler? Let's consider a few. "I can't give you my number" equals "I'm not interested in you." "I can't give you my number" equals "you're not interesting." "I can't give you my number" equals "I don't want to see you again." All of these would work. As you start to go through these, you'll find many ways to express the same ideas. This will be most effective if your imaginary person, in this case an attractive girl whose number you are asking for, is saying things about you rather than the situation. We are looking for perceived weaknesses about you and how they would be expressed by others in your worst nightmare scenario. For this, the second sentence is closest. You aren't interesting. So for part 4, we have, "You aren't attractive because you aren't interesting." This fits into the A causes B or A means B very nicely. Step 5. Write out each objection with the patterns. Obliterate the objection A equals B or A causes B with each pattern. There are 18 patterns in all. We'll go through several examples, but eventually, to get the most benefit from these, you'll have to apply them to your own worst nightmare scenarios. To create the most impact on your frame strength and self-confidence, it's best if you write these out in a notebook, pen and paper. If you type them out, it involves a lot less effort. By writing them out longhand, you are taking much more time and involving more thought and physical effort. Writing while thinking will create more neural connections related to these patterns. This will make them much easier to use in real time. For example, if you were studying a foreign language, just reading words in the target language wouldn't create an impact on your neurology. But taking the time to write them out will. This will be time-consuming. But the more effort you put in, thinking and writing, to overcome your most feared objections, the stronger your frame will become. Think of this as metaphorically taking the time to exercise and strengthen your frame, just like you exercise and strengthen your muscles. Building stronger muscles takes plenty of time. But for those who work out regularly, they know it is well worth it for many reasons. Please treat these writing exercises as seriously as you would a regular gym routine. Step 6. Repeat with as many permutations as possible. For example, you could take the base objection, "you aren't attractive because you aren't interesting," and rewrite it in many ways. Meaning you can switch adjectives on both sides. For attractive, you could use sexy, handsome, dateable, relationship material, etc. For interesting, you could write out funny, handsome, tall, smart, intelligent, etc. Yes, this will take time. Always keep in mind that this is not a once-and-done exercise. This requires just as much dedication and commitment as physical exercise. By exercising every day, you gain plenty of benefits: health, self-confidence, sex appeal, self-esteem, a longer life, etc. By writing these out every day, you will similarly get plenty of benefits: stronger frame, stronger self-confidence. Your personality will become much more flexible and interesting. You'll soon never lose another argument. Your thinking will become much more flexible and creative, and you will be able to earn a lot more money. And those are just the beginning. If you work through any initial frustration and discomfort, making the decision to write out these patterns every single day on at least one new objection per day will change how you view the world and yourself in very significant ways. Remember that the quality of your life is directly tied to the strength of your frame. Not only will doing these strengthen your frame considerably, but you will become unassailable from a verbal and intellectual perspective. In a real way, these will give you black belt thinking and speaking skills that few people even know exist. The rewards of spending 20 to 30 minutes a day on these are enormous. Step 7. Say the reframes out loud while visualizing. Once you've written them out longhand, practice saying them out loud. This will be much quicker than writing them, but this extra step will make them feel real. Actually imagine somebody saying the objection. Close your eyes and imagine the person saying them. Imagine the look on their face. Imagine the worst look on their face possible. Then while imagining them saying them, repeat each objection one by one. Open your eyes to look at the next answer and then close your eyes and repeat the process. Imagine asking the question. Imagine hearing your worst nightmare answer, and then say the reframe. Doing this will solidify the neural connections you've built by writing. Doing this last step after writing out all 18 patterns should only take a few minutes. Chapter 12. The Patterns. Each pattern will contain the example objection, "You aren't attractive because you aren't interesting." Pattern 1. Metaframe. This is when you look at the big picture. Meta means above, so go up as many logical levels as you can. Try to make the issue, not interesting equals not attractive, seem different from the larger perspective. Example. There's a lot more to being attractive than just being interesting. Pattern 2. Change frame size. This is when you change to either a larger frame or a smaller frame. Usually going slightly smaller is a good idea. One way is to look at the depth of either side, interesting or attractive. Example. Being interesting is subjective and is based on a lot of different variables and is often situational. Pattern 3. Apply to self, A to A. Take the A side and reflect it back on the idea itself. This can be done in a positive or negative way depending on the situation. Example. The idea that you need to be interesting to be attractive is not a very attractive idea to most people. Pattern 4. Apply to self, B to B. Same as before, only do it on the other side. Example. The idea that you need to be interesting to be attractive is a very common and uninteresting idea. Pattern 5. Reality strategy. When you examine the relationship A to B in detail. Example. How do you know exactly? I mean, are there upper and lower limits on being interesting which causes attraction? How exactly do you know from an internal perspective when somebody crosses the minimum interesting threshold enough to create attraction? Is the attraction and interesting relationship linear? Does it ever become exponential? Pattern 6. Model of the world. Explore the relationship as a general model of the world. Ideally, point out how some people get along just fine without using this model of the world. Usually start off by saying, "That's an interesting model of the world." Example. That's an interesting model of the world. That's an interesting model of the world. What happens when you're in a relationship with somebody and they are going through a non-interesting phase of their life? What if you meet somebody who would otherwise be a great relationship partner, but it happens to be on a non-interesting day? Are you telling me that everybody since the dawn of time only hooked up when they found the other person very interesting from the very beginning? Pattern 7, intent. Instead of attacking the idea A means B, attack the perceived intent beneath it. Example. So what you're saying is that because you have such a short attention span, somebody must be a constant source of entertainment for you to feel attractive. Pattern 8, redefine A not equal to B. When you accept the A part but show it's equal to something other than the B part. Example. Not being attractive doesn't come from not being interesting. It comes from my calculated delivery of attraction, which will always increase over time. Of course, that only works if I start from a 0 level of attraction. That's always much better than putting my most attractive foot forward from the beginning, which will obviously set unreasonably high expectations. The way I deliver attraction, it is always increasing over time, which means every time you see me, I'll be more attractive than I was last time. Pattern 9, redefine B not equal to A. Same as before, only say that B is not from A, it's from something else. Example. Not always being interesting doesn't mean I'm not attractive. It means I'm thinking very strongly about how to best create wonderful feelings in you that no other man can. Pattern 10, counter example. Show any example that is opposite of what was just presented. Example. So if you happen to be at a meditation class, you won't be able to meet the man of your dreams since everybody is purposely being as outwardly uninteresting as possible, right? Pattern 11, chunk up. This is like metaframe where you look at any bigger picture element of the stated objection. Example. So you can only be in relationships with people who are interesting all the time? What if the guy falls asleep? Pattern 12, chunk down. Look at anything smaller, either side A or B or the relationship. Example. How specifically does being interesting cause attraction? Do you fall in love with every professor at school who teaches an interesting subject? How long does a unit of interest last as far as creating attraction? How exactly do you measure levels of attraction and interest anyway? Pattern 13, metaphor. Tell a story that contradicts the objection. Any story, true or false, where A is not equal to B or A is the opposite of B. Example. One of my friends has been married for over 40 years. They have 3 kids and 8 grandkids. She first got up the courage to talk to him after standing silently next to him at the bus stop every morning. Even though he just stood there looking straight ahead and never talking, she knew there was something special about him. Turns out the guy is really introverted, but he is a romantic genius. She has never not felt lucky that she decided to make the first move. Pattern 14, another outcome. This is when you say that whether A leads to B or means or equals B isn't really the important thing. The important thing is whatever you want it to be. Example. Well, whether I'm interesting right this second isn't really the issue. What's really important is my ability to look inside and see the person you really are, the person you really want to be, and to help you express that person in a way that only you know is true, and to help you find your unique gifts that the world so desperately needs right now. Pattern 15, consequences. This is when you explain the ultimate outcome of the objection. Example. Well, if you only decided to get together with guys that are interesting from the first time you meet them, you might end up only dating really outgoing extroverts, and you're going to always have a lot of competition. You'll probably never be safe in your relationship. Pattern 16, hierarchy of criteria. This is when you look at more important things that the person stating the objection might consider. Example. Obviously, being in a relationship with somebody who's interesting is important, but there are many other things to consider like intelligence, communication skills, and emotional availability. These take a long time to figure out, which is why people generally date for a while before even thinking about making a commitment. Pattern 17, take it to the threshold. Take the objection A is B and blow it up to extreme and silly levels. Example. So your ideal husband is a circus clown who is always riding around the house on a unicycle and juggling all your furniture? How do you get any sleep with him honking that silly clown horn all the time? Suppose he has to visit you in the hospital. How does he get up the stairs on his unicycle? Pattern 18, reverse presuppositions. Take the opposite of either side and see how it creates more of the other side. For example, if A causes B, ask the following. How can less A mean more B? How can more A mean less B? Example. How would a non-interesting person be even more attractive? How could an interesting person be too interesting to be attractive? I'm George Hutton. Thank you for listening to the Mind Persuasion Podcast. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.